So a couple of days ago, I put out a video saying that there are only basically three things that you can get from a woman. You can get sex, domestic comfort and companionship, and children. And so a lot of guys ask me, so what is it that women get out of men? That, of course, is the famous question Sigmund Freud asked. What do women want? Sigmund Freud was a mama's boy who had all kinds of attachment issues. I mean, Sigmund Freud is not an authority on fucking anything, okay? But be that as it may, the question, what is it that women want, is a fair question. It's a fair question, and it ought to be answered. It ought to be answered seriously. And so I'm going to try to answer it, semi-seriously. The first thing that women want, that they indisputably want, is the dick. Oh yeah, women love the D. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Don't let them fool you. Women love dick. If they didn't love dick, there would be no procreation. We wouldn't exist as a species. Of course they love sex. Of course they like the dick. But the other thing that they want out of a guy, and this is the problem we're having in our society, in our culture today, the other thing that they want from a man is security. See, because a woman needs a man in order to have and raise a child. A woman cannot raise a child on her own, or at least she couldn't, not in a historical sense. For most of the time that human beings have been on this earth, a woman has needed a man because a woman alone cannot both raise a child and provide the sustenance, food, what have you, in order to feed herself and the child. She needed a man. She needed the security that a man could provide. But see, in the last few decades, women don't need a guy, not anymore. They can get security either on their own or by way of the government. See, on their own, women have been encouraged to find jobs for themselves, and so a lot of women have done so. They've gone out into the workforce and found gainful employment. Good on them. But because of this gainful employment, they are able to outsource the raising of their children to daycare centers and schooling. And so they can devote all of their time to raising money and so thereby be independent. They don't need a man. And if perchance they are not able to get a job, they can depend on the state. The state can provide them the funds. And because the state can provide women with an income, EBT cards, what have you, in order to support themselves and their child or children, that's why women don't need men the way that they used to. And there's the other problem, of course, which is the birth control pill. Because before, when a woman wanted dick, she might get pregnant. Yeah, which was not something that she was really looking forward to. So she had to make sure that the guy she was fucking could potentially provide her with, food and shelter and all the rest of the needs of security. But with the birth control pill, a woman can fuck as much as she wants and she's unlikely to get pregnant. Since she is unlikely to get pregnant, she can have the dick but not the man. You see what I mean? It's kind of depressing, but see, she can have her one-night stands free of any guilt or worry because she knows that she's not going to get pregnant. And worst case comes to worse, she can always abort the child. And that's something that's been going on too now, isn't it? So that's why women don't really need men except for dick and sort of security. Kind of like half of the security equation, if you will. And see, this is why men are so goddamn confused as of late. I mean, they don't understand what women want. They used to understand. They used to understand that a woman wanted dick and she also wanted security. But now, because a woman can provide for her own security and a woman can use the state to subsidize her children, her needs for a man are far more limited. A very attractive woman will see a high-status rich man and she will want him. And there is no way that she can provide that standard of living or for the state to provide that standard of living. So it's only at the very top echelons of the sexual marketplace that you see traditional roles. What do hot women look like? Attractive women, naturally attractive women. They look feminine. They act feminine. See what I mean? Because they recognize that they need to be feminine in order to attract that high status man. But insofar as your lower status females, your 6s, your 5s, your 4s, yeah, they realize that they have the state that can backstop them. They have the state that can support them. Even if they have a lousy job or no job at all, they can rely on the state. And so, are they feminine? No! They look like fucking cows, right? No makeup, no femininity, the way they dress up. How do they dress up? They dress up like fucking slobs, for crying out loud. They don't need to be feminine because, see, they don't need a guy. Because the guy that she can attract, the low status guy, right? He cannot provide the hands-off freedom and security that the state can provide by way of welfare. You see what's going on? Women have always hated to depend on men. I mean, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you hate to depend on somebody else for your security, for your livelihood? You'd hate it, of course. Well, the same thing happens with women. But it's been the natural course of events until recently. See, the sexual revolution that we're living in the afterglow of, or the after effects of, it's a very recent thing, and it was not normal for millennia, for hundreds of millennia. The human species, the female, has always depended on the male. It's only now that she has independence. Independence purchased by way of the birth control pill, independence purchased by way of the state. Were it not for these two factors, women would still be going after men, still trying to get them to support them and take care of them, as happens in third world countries. You go to Eastern Europe, you go to Brazil or Argentina or any other third world or underdeveloped country, and you will find that the women there are feminine. The women there are flirty. The women there are interested in getting a good man. Why? Because the state can't support them in those countries, because those countries are poor, or at least not rich enough in order to support a woman in a fairly decent style. But you go to first world countries like Germany, Holland, Sweden, what have you. Oh, the women, right? They're not feminine at all. They don't give a shit about guys because the state is going to take care of them. Yeah. And so they look at men as just a dick. They look at men as just the extra that is attached to the D. They do not give a shit about men. And they do not give a shit about attracting a man. Because a man does not equal security. A man is just a dick to them because the security that's being provided to them by the state. So you see why men in first world countries are so unhappy with their women, and why so many men in first world countries go to third world countries or underdeveloped countries to find themselves a mate. Because those women in underdeveloped and third world countries, they still need a man to provide them security. And they are willing to be feminine and attractive to those men in order to get that security from them. Get that good husband who will provide them with shelter, food, clothing. And in exchange, they will have sex with him, and in exchange, they will have their children. But women in first world countries, women in rich countries, women in countries where the state can replace men, ain't gonna happen. It's a terrible state of affairs if you think about it. Women look at men with contempt. They treat them with contempt. And because women can afford to raise their children without the husband, without the father of their children, that's why you have so many single mothers. And those single mothers, what do they teach their sons? They teach their sons that men are contemptible. They teach their sons that they are worthless deadbeats. And so what happens, of course, is that a lot of those sons grow up to be either worthless deadbeats or these passive-aggressive soy boy mama's boys who are just so pathetic and contemptible, but it's how they were raised. Is the state of affairs going to change? Have you ever tried to put toothpaste back into the tube Has it worked out for you? This state of affairs is permanent. It's not going to get any better. And if you want a woman, then there are basically two ways they have to do it. Number one, you got to learn game or get rich, one or the other. Game or being exceedingly rich will allow you access to the top tier women, the most attractive feminine women. Getting rich is hard, so I would suggest learning game. And of course the other way is to go to some third world or underdeveloped country and find yourself a woman there, because she will be looking for a man who can provide her security. Because if she lives in an underdeveloped country or third world country, her state will not provide that for her. She will need a man. All this, of course, is presupposing that you want to have a woman in your life. Because the fact of the matter is, because women do not really need a guy except for dick, then you can basically afford to, as they say, milk the cow without having to own it. You can get as much pussy as you want and not have to worry about the pesky issues of having a relationship and having, you know, a common life together. You can hopscotch from woman to woman and they'll be happy. They'll be welcoming. The only problem, of course, is that it is an exceptionally lonely and empty kind of life. Men who hopscotch from woman to woman, yeah, sure, it's fun. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, it's fun as hell. But the fact of the matter is, it's lonesome. And after a while, the idea of just fucking some girl that you met is not that appealing. Now, of course, if you're in celibate, right, an involuntary celibate, yeah, the idea that it's not a good thing is going to be like anathema to you. You're not going to believe it. But trust me, you get to a point where picking up some girl is an easy thing for you. And the idea of doing it is just not appealing at all. What you want is to find a woman that you can hang out with, that you can just relax and watch TV with and laugh at the same things. The funny thing is that women become just as satisfied as men by the state of affairs, because women don't want to be on their own. They don't want security brought to them by some disembodied state. They reject it as much as men do. But it's how our society has been structured and where it has led up to. And to change it, well, you know, there's no real way to change it. We just have to move forward and see what happens in the next turn in the road. But for now, this is what's going on. And you can enjoy this period that we're living through. And you can get a lot out of it. You can get shitloads of pussy if you got a mind for it, right? But you're not going to get much satisfaction. And women are going to get zero satisfaction out of it. Because to them, it sounds like such an ideal world where they can earn their own keep and they don't need a man to support them, or they can turn to the state and get the state to support them. But the fact of the matter is, either way, being a slave to the state or being a slave to their job, it's still a kind of slavery. Whereas if they're with a man and having children with that man, they're building a family, which is something much more valuable. At least it's theirs. But women don't see it that way until it's too late. Women recognize this truth only when the doors have all shut. And that's their tragedy.